So, this movie begins with the opening credits, and we have two children here. We have Kaylee and we have Kevin. Now, for me, it's very hard to determine the two because they both sound like children. I can't make out which one is which at the beginning, but they're both in the hallway. They're trying to play with this toy, but it's not working. So then they go into their dad's room, and their dad is just like watching TV. And then we cut to a scene where one of the kids goes into the bedroom, and there are Legos there, and they're throwing Legos around, and we're just getting like numerous shots of just hallways and walls and doors and stuff that you don't think matters, but it's like, is there something lingering in the background? There's something sinister going on here. I just don't know what it is. I feel like if I didn't know this was supposed to be like, a horror film, you just go into it completely blind. You're probably wondering like, what the hell is this? What's happening? Do you feel like there's something sinister going on or not? But since I knew this was a horror film, I feel like, okay, there could be things lurking in the shadows and stuff. So I'm like constantly looking to see if there's anything there. And there's this one scene where I think Kevin wakes up and he goes into the hallway and he sits next to the nightlight, which they show a lot. Then he goes to open the closet door and he grabs some blankets out of there. And then we hear him say, "Are you hiding to the air?" He's speaking to nobody, but there's something there. There's someone there. Then he counts down from three and he throws himself down the stairs. And then the father wakes up and he rushes, hears his son crying, grabs him, and we don't know. I'm pretty sure Kaylee comes too. And you hear a door shut, and then you hear a car starting and driving away. And then the film gets a little weird at this point because then the camera pans around and it's a completely different feeling now. It doesn't feel like the low angle shots that we saw earlier. Now it's kind of like centered, but the camera's like panning and gliding around the living room and it focuses on the television. And then television turns on by itself and cartoons playing. And then the kids and the father come back home and the TV shuts off by itself. So right then and there, I'm thinking, okay, there's an entity in the house. What is it? How did it get there? I don't know, but there's something there. And then so the father takes the kids to bed, and he goes into the bedroom, and he calls the mother, which clearly the mom's not present because we never hear the kids calling for the mom. We never hear the mother's voice. So he makes a phone call to the mother. We don't know where she is. We don't know why they're separated or whatever's going on, or she's just away somewhere. We don't know what to deal with that, but he's calling the mother. There's no indication that he's calling the mom, but that's just how I feel. I feel like he's called. Who else are you gonna call? Could call his grandmother or whatever, but I feel like he's calling the mother character, and he's telling the mother that Kevin's fine, he didn't even need stitches and all this kind of stuff. And they put these subtitles up, and it's kind of bizarre because I can understand what the character is saying. I can hear them clearly. There are some scenes in the film where I can't understand them and the voices are muffled, where they should have used subtitles but they didn't. So I feel like a lot of the film is where they use subtitles, but I can clearly make out what they're saying. So I just thought that was kind of odd. But he's like, yeah, Kevin didn't even need stitches and whatever. And then stuff starts getting even more crazy because then the kids wake up in the middle of the night, or we assume it's the nighttime, and the father's missing. The father's gone, and that's the plot line for this film. When you look everywhere, it's like the kids wake up one night, their father's gone, and all the windows and the doors in the house have vanished. And that's what happens. And that's when the shit starts hitting the fan, because then it's like, holy shit, there's something here. Like, what? Like, and it's bizarre too. And then you feel for the kids because they're just like, they pull up the blinds and they're like, where did it go? Where's the window? So I feel for them, and I start feeling like just emotion for them, because then they go to in their father's room, and they go to the telephone, and they dial a series of numbers at first, and I think they're dialing their mother, but all they get is a dial tone. There's like no signal. And then they dial 911, which I hear a series of three numbers or three dials. And I'm thinking they're calling 911, but then still same thing, no signal. So then they drop the hang up the phone, and then a series of sequences that are my favorite in the film. The kids say, "Oh, let's sleep downstairs tonight." You know, just hearing their voices, you just feel that emotion for them. You're like, "This is a bad situation. Like, what is happening?" And they go downstairs and they start watching cartoons. And you know, for me, in my initial review, I was like, I feel this film because you know when I was younger, I'd watch a lot of horror films, and I'd be terrified out of my mind. And so I would need comfort, and I'd watch cartoons to give me that comfort. And with this, I feel like that's what the kids are doing. I'm projecting my own thing onto what I'm seeing. And so they're watching the cartoons for comfort because, you know, it's like stuff is crazy right now, you know? And one of my favorite scenes in this film, when I really build that emotion for these two kids, is when Kaylee, I assume it's Kaylee, she tells Kevin, she's like, love you. And then Kevin, you know, he pauses for a moment in that typical young boy fashion. You know, kind of, you can picture, even though you can't see his face, you can kind of picture him kind of maybe rolling his eyes or something. He's like, yeah, I love you too, you know. So it's like you build that connection with them, and I feel that emotion to where when that moment happens, when they say they love each other, I'm just like, shit's gonna get worse, man. Please don't let anything bad happen to these children, man. That I was really sucked in by that point. I was feeling for him. And then, you know, we just get a series of mundane scenes. They turn the lights off. The cartoons are still playing. They assume it's time to get up. They can't tell if it's morning or night because there are no windows. But they get up, they eat some breakfast. And then one of the kids, I don't know if it's Kaylee or Kevin, but they go upstairs to get some toys. And then they come back downstairs. And just a series of mundane things. But then when it really starts getting interesting is they start talking about their mom. I think Kaylee starts talking about, I wish mom were here. And then Kevin says, I don't want to talk about mom. So clearly there's got to be some sort of bitterness there, which we'll get into. And then then they start talking, and then they hear like a thud, a loud thud noise. I assume it's coming from upstairs, and it interrupts their conversation because they're like, why hasn't anybody come for us yet? Why isn't anyone here? You know, and that's the thing I was thinking is like, okay, so they're clearly trapped in this house. There's no escape. But then how does it look on the outside? Like, if someone were to come over to the house, like, how does that work? I don't know. But they're like, yeah, you know, I don't know what's going on. They can't explain it. Neither can I. And I'm interested. I'm intrigued. That's what keeps me invested because I'm like, I want to see what's going to happen next here. What's happening? And then they hear a loud thud during their conversation. They get up and they're frozen in terror. We just see their feet, but I assume they're just frozen in terror because they're standing next to each other. And you just see a chair on the ceiling. And it's just there. And it's creepy. And it's weird. And I'm into it. I'm like, okay, man, there's clearly an entity. It's like Paranormal Activity. There's clearly an entity in this house. And it's terrorizing them. Why is it terrorizing them? I don't know. But from my assumption is that this entity keeps watching these cartoons. It's getting the ideas from these cartoons because there's a scene later on where it's watching this cartoon of this bunny, you know, doing a disappearing act, and it keeps rewinding it. And then during that moment, it makes one of the toys disappear, and it's just throwing like things all over the place, making the kids do stuff. So I feel like it's just, you know, it's the entity that's here is doing these things based on the cartoon that it's watching. Even this entity admits that, hey, I want to play. You know, even if the kids don't want to play, this entity, you know, it's like you could say it's a demon or something. And then what do demons do? You know, they just like to torture their victims. You know, they're not going to kill you right away. They want to play with you first. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I assume this is. It's like Paranormal Activity. There's a demon in your house. and you can't leave because all the windows and doors are gone, and they're kids and they're trapped. And I feel that it's good, even though it drags a little bit. But yeah, so the chair's on the ceiling, and then you fast forward a little bit. This entity finally speaks, and it says, "Kaylee, come up." It tells Kaylee to come upstairs. So Kaylee goes upstairs, and this is a tension building scene. This is really good. She comes and she goes into the bedroom, and she sees her father. You don't see his face, but you see his body and his arm. And father's like, "Look under the bed." And it's like first person view. She looks under the bed. She's like, "I can't see anything." And then father disappears. And then she looks across the bed, and the mother's sitting over there, but her back's turned. Can't see her face, so it's kind of creepy and eerie. And then she's saying something like, "Your father and I." And what I read online, people were saying that, well, this is an indication that the mother and the father, they're separating. What do parents normally say before they say, what do parents normally tell their children before they're separating? They're like, "Hey, we love you and everything," but she didn't get to finish her sentence. So there's a clear indication that the parents are separated. They're not living in the same house, and what we're seeing during this moment most likely is an apparition, or the demon, or this entity is just playing with her. Who knows what's happening? But there's many possibilities here. I feel like the entity's just fooling around with her, just playing games based on the cartoons. It's just getting these ideas from the cartoons. It's playing games with them and playing with their emotions. And so the scene is fine. I think for me it's one of the worst scenes in the film, because it's just like it builds that tension to where I'm like, what's gonna happen? This is kind of creepy. What's going on? And then it just ends on a jump scare. It's like the mother is like, "There's someone here." It's just repeating what Kaylee is saying, and then all of a sudden, it just lingers on this hallway and this doorway, and I'm just like building the anticipation, like what's gonna happen. And then there's a jump scare. His hand comes through, and you hear a loud noise, and that's it. And I'm just like, it's kind of disappointing. That didn't really go anywhere. Okay, whatever. So then I kind of lose interest at that point. And then Kaylee goes downstairs, and she's terrified. She's like, "Let's put the sofa in front of where the stairs are, so no one's going upstairs anymore." And then they're just like freaked out by this point. And then there's a moment where it gets kind of sad, where this entity's like telling Kaylee, "Go downstairs." So then she goes downstairs, she disappears, and then Kevin wakes up from his nap, and just hearing their voices just makes me feel for them, man, because he's just like, "Hello, Kaylee, where are you?" And I'm like, damn, man. I don't want anything bad to happen to these kids, man. I'm right there with them. I'm like, man, how are they gonna get out of this, man? And then Kevin, he starts playing with his toys, and then this entity starts speaking to Kevin, and Kevin's like, "Hello," like, so clearly I guess Kevin didn't know that the thing was there. I don't know who he was talking to at the beginning. There's a moment earlier in the film that I glossed over where I think it's Kevin who stands in the hallway looking into the dark saying, "Mom, why are you crying?" I don't understand why that's there. Did he see that vision of his mom? I don't know. But fast forwarding back to when Kaylee disappears, and then Kevin hears the demonic voice. He's kind of, either he's ignoring it, because this time because I feel like at the beginning of the film, he knows that it's there. He's like, "Are you hiding?" And he's speaking to it. And then as everything progresses, he's not into it anymore. I guess at first he was like thinking, "Oh yeah, this entity and I are friends," like how like in the horror movie trope is, the little kids, they're like, "Oh, this is my imaginary friend," and the parents like, "Oh, our kid is crazy," and stuff. So that's how I think it went at the beginning. It's like this kid Kevin, he knows this entity's there. It's like his imaginary friend. But then once the shit hits the fan and starts messing with his sister, then he's just like, "All right, I'm not a fan of this anymore. I don't want any part of this." I think that's what's happening. One part I did skip over was there was a scene where the toilet disappears. They go to the bathroom, and the toilet just vanishes. And they're like, where did it go? And I'm like, that's messed up, man. You're gonna just take the toilet for no reason. Like, I understand the windows and the doors. You don't want them to leave. But man, the toilet, man. Come on, man. That's not right. Now you're really playing games. But yeah, so then the toilet disappears, and then I think Kaylee goes into the bedroom, and it's a pretty intense scene, kind of scary. Dolls on the ceiling, things are falling off the walls, and then Kevin, comes in, jump scares. There's a lot of jump scares in here, but it builds the tension though before the jump scare comes. But yeah, going back to the Kaylee disappearing, Kevin, he hears the demon voice. Demon's like, come downstairs. Kevin's like, hello, and then like Demon's like, go downstairs in the basement. And Kevin goes down in the basement, and he finds his sister Kaylee with her eyes missing, her mouth missing. She's just, and she's gone. She's gone. She's physically there, but she's gone. The demon shut her up, and the excuse that it gives is that she wasn't listening to orders that I was giving her, so I kept her mouth shut or something. And I was like, what are you talking about, man? You told her to go upstairs. She went upstairs. You told her to go in the basement. She went in the basement. What more do you want from her, man? It's messed up, man. But it was a scary scene, though. It was like when her face pops out of the dark, man, that got me. I was like, oh, man, that's really, like, just putting yourself in that position, like, as a kid looking for your sister in the basement, creepiest part of the house, and then you just see the shadow, and then it's your sister and her face is missing. That's like, that got me, man, because I was like in the kid's perspective. And then he runs upstairs, and he's like breathing really heavily. He's like terrified at this point, and then the stuff just gets real wacky by this point. Because then this demon, this entity, whatever this is really playing games with Kevin. He's like, oh, go to sleep. And Kevin passes out. Then he's like, this entity's like watching cartoons and getting ideas from these cartoons and just playing games. Then the entity wakes Kevin back up. And then he's like, stab yourself in the eye with this knife. Then Kevin stabs himself in the eye. And you see a little bit of blood on the cabinet. And then Kevin's crying, and I'm just like, this is sad, man. Like, why get the kid out of his misery, man? Like, come on, man. And then so Kevin's crying, and then he goes to call 911. He calls 911, and they answer the phone, and then the operator is like trying to comfort the boy. And the boy, he's not panicking or anything. He's like, yeah, I'm hurt, I'm bleeding, all this kind of stuff. And then this entity is like, I've been playing games with you the whole time. There's no one on that phone. You've been talking into a toy phone this whole time. And then you see the toy phone, and and then the kid's like, you did that. And then the demon starts laughing, and it's just like, man, this is a big joke to the demon. This is some crazy stuff, man. This is scary. And then it kind of drags by this point, because then this entity's like, come upstairs, and then he goes upstairs, and then now the ceiling's upside down. Now the boy's on the ceiling, and then he goes into the bedroom, and then like everything's upside down, and then there's like a black screen, and then you see all the Legos on the ceiling, and then it says 500 and something days, which I don't understand. I don't think that I've read things online where people said, oh, yeah, that many days has passed. And I'm like, that's impossible. That boy would be dead from starvation, because I'm pretty sure they don't have that much food. So that's bullcrap. He would be dead. So I don't know what that means. I did read another review online where this one person who didn't like the film said that, oh, it's supposed to mean something to the viewer or to the director, because there's the illusion that it means something, but it really doesn't. And I don't want to feel that way, but then I kind of make that assumption that it really doesn't mean anything. The director just decided to put that in there just to get the conversation going. I don't know what that means. 500 and whatever days it said, I don't know what that means. I don't think the kid's been in that house trapped in there for that long, because that's impossible. Some people theorize that it could be a continuous time loop or something. I don't know what it is. But all the Legos are on the ceiling. Everything's upside down. And then I think the ending to this film is really good. It's really good. It's like Blair Witch Project. It's very ambiguous, but instead of not seeing anything, we do see something this time. But we don't know what it is. We don't know what's going on here. And I think it's ambiguous on purpose. It's left up to the viewer's interpretation. So after all of this madness, we reach the ending where the screen is. Well, actually, before we get to the ending, there's this really horrific scene that is just like one of the scariest scenes in the film, where his blood just I don't know how you describe it, but the blood just like it sprays across the ceiling, and it sprays 3 times. Now, one review that I read said that, oh yeah, that doesn't mean anything. It's just silly. But to me, I'm thinking, okay, so there's 4 family members. The blood smeared 3 times, and you hear screaming, and then you see subtitles that says "mommy." So what I'm assuming is this demon did, because they even ask like, "Where do you think dad is? Where do you think mom is?" And I'm assuming that if Kyle Edward Ball wanted to make a series of Skinamarink films, he can. He can do one for the father and his own abyss. He can do the one for the mother and her own abyss. Because where did they go? I'm pretty sure that the entity's messing with them too. Because they're not here. They just disappear too. And so I feel like what this entity does is he kills them. That's what that blood is. Because there's 3 sprays of blood. One for Kaylee, one for the father, one for the mother. So the demon just killed all 3 of them in front of Kevin, and they're dead. And you hear the screaming, and they die. At least that's what I got from it. That's not an act. I don't know what the word. That's what I take from it. That's what I get from it. I don't know if that's the case, but that's what I get from it. But then by the end of the film, everything is red, and it's kind of like dreamlike. And if you read online, people say that it's interpreted as like when you're a kid and you wake up from a nightmare, everything is blurry, your vision is blurry, you're disoriented, you don't quite know where you are and everything. And so when I first saw the film, I've seen it twice. When I first saw the film, I said, okay, so this face that we see at the end is the face of the entity. It's the face of this demonic presence. And that's how I ended the film. I was like, okay, so this demon just came into the house for no reason. We don't know how it got there, why it's there. It's just torturing these kids for no reason, just because it's watching these cartoons and it just wants to have fun. And it even says, I want to play, and it's playing these games with these kids before it ultimately ends up taking their lives. So at the end of the film, kid's like, what's your name? And this demon is just like, go to sleep. And then so first time I saw the film, I was like, everybody's dead. Everybody died by this presence, this entity, because it just wanted to fool around. That's it. But then when I watched it the second time, I came up with the conclusion that it could all be a dream. Because when you see the face at the end, it doesn't really look all that sinister. It looks like a human face, kind of. And so how you can interpret it as is like, okay, the kid at the beginning fell down the stairs and hit his head. You could say that, well, all of that stuff that just happened was in a dream. It was a nightmare that the kid was having. And then when the kid finally comes to and opens his eyes, his vision is so blurry that that entity that he sees is his father. But he can't quite make out his face because he just hit his head or something, or he just woke up from bed. And I feel like you can look at it either way. You can look at it as like that face at the end is the entity, and the entity killed the kid, or that's the father's face, and the father is like nurturing the kid, and the kid is just completely disoriented after falling down the stairs and really just being in a coma and suffering from a terrifying nightmare. It could go either way. It's very ambiguous. There's no clear-cut answer, and I like films like that. I like films that kind of make you choose your own adventure and make you decide, is the ending happy or is it sad? It could be good, it could be bad. It's whatever you want. So yeah, Skinamarink. I think the title's interesting too, based on the popular Skinamarink kids song. I did read something online where the director said that he purposely changed the certain letters because he didn't want kids to type in Skinamarink on Google or Skinamarink and then come up with this film and all that kind of stuff. Because this is definitely, even though kids are in the film, this is definitely not a film for kids. Even though you barely see anything on the screen, but for me, I feel this film, being what it is, it drags for a little bit. There are some mundane moments. I've read reviews online where people said, yeah, you could shave off 20 minutes. And I feel like, yeah, you could definitely shave off 20 minutes of this film. Um, it gets me, though. To me, this is a very scary movie, probably based on my experiences I had in the past as a kid. But yeah, I do feel that there's a story being told. Um, is it clear cut? No. Is it ambiguous? Yes. Is it different? I enjoy how different it is. I had a good time with it. I had a good time with it. I mean, yeah, it's like it's an emotional roller coaster. Because at the beginning I'm like, what is this? And then as it progresses, I'm like, what is happening here? I'm intrigued. I want to know what's gonna happen here. And then it progresses, and I'm like, all right, there's just some weird stuff happening here, and it's just like it kind of goes on for far too long. But I want to know what happens. I want to know what's going on, and then when the ending comes, I'm just like, I'm left satisfied because I'm like, that's interesting. You can come up with your own conclusion. Did the kids live or did they die? It's completely up to you how I feel. So yeah, did the kids live or did they die? It's completely up to you.